I came back to Westbridge quietly. The train pulled in just after 7, early enough that the platform was half empty, late enough that no one expected me. I stepped down with one suitcase and a leather briefcase that had once belonged to my grandfather. The metal handle was worn smooth where his fingers had rested for decades. I liked that detail. It reminded me that objects remember discipline even when people don't. Westbridge hadn't changed. The same narrow streets, the same clean storefronts pretending not to compete, the same brick facade of Westbridge Holdings rising at the center of town like a monument to inheritance. I did not tell anyone I was coming. When you grow up in a family like mine, you learn that announcements create strategy. Silence creates truth. The building doors opened without hesitation when I scanned my old credentials. No one had revoked them. That detail registered quietly. Either they had forgotten or they had never believed I would return. The lobby was marble and glass, controlled temperature, controlled lighting, controlled perception. Behind the reception desk sat Caroline. She had started as an intern when Marcus began shadowing my father. Now she wore tailored suits and a careful smile. Her eyes lifted when she saw me. There was a pause. Recognition followed calculation. "Ethan," she said, not warmly, not unkindly, just surprised. "I'm here for the board meeting." She hesitated. "Project Sentinel is already in session." "I know." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as if she were deciding whether to alert someone. She didn't. "Third floor," she said finally. I walked past the photographs lining the hallway. My grandfather breaking ground on the first warehouse. My father shaking hands with city officials. Marcus receiving an industry award at 28. I paused briefly at one image near the end, a black and white photograph of the original office. My grandfather stood alone in it, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, a ledger open in front of him. No applause, no audience, just work. He had once told me, "The ones who speak least in meetings are usually the ones who understand the numbers." I had understood that before I understood him. Outside the boardroom doors, I slowed. Voices carried clearly through the wood. "Ethan," someone said, faintly amused, "the family mistake." A few quiet laughs followed. Not loud, not cruel, just comfortable. Comfortable cruelty is the most efficient kind. Marcus's voice came next, steady and confident. "Project Sentinel secures continuity. It's structured cleanly. Legal has reviewed it. It's decided." Decided. The word rested there like a final stamp. No one questioned it. I stood outside that door for a full 5 seconds. I counted them. 1, for tone. 2, for timing. 3, for hierarchy. 4, for risk. 5, for control. Then I opened it. The room stilled. Conversations break differently when interrupted. Some fracture, some freeze. This one froze. Marcus stood at the head of the table, remote in hand, screen glowing behind him. Project Sentinel Executive Restructuring Initiative. My father sat 2 seats to his right, calm, arms folded, watching. Several board members turned slowly in their chairs. Marcus recovered first. "Ethan," he said smoothly, as if I had arrived early to a family dinner. "We thought you were still in Chicago." "I was," I replied. My voice did not rise. It did not sharpen. It occupied space without apology. I did not take my assigned seat. Instead, I remained standing at the end of the table. The slide behind him showed a new ownership diagram. Marcus's name centered, reporting lines redrawn, authority consolidated. My name appeared nowhere. As I was explaining, Marcus continued, "The transition is procedural, founder approved, board ratified. We're simply formalizing." "It's decided," one director repeated. I stepped toward the microphone. "Decided," I said calmly. "By who?" The air shifted, not dramatically, just enough. My father leaned back. "The vote was unanimous," he said. "You were notified." "I received an email," I answered. "Notification is not participation." Marcus smiled faintly. "You chose distance." I chose work. And this is work, he replied, gesturing at the screen. I placed my briefcase on the table and opened it slowly. Every eye followed the movement. Inside was my grandfather's folder. He had given it to me the winter before he died. We'd been alone in his office, snow against the windows, the rest of the family at a fundraiser. If something ever feels off, he said, sliding the folder toward me, look closely. I learned early how to look closely. In Chicago, I built a career in analytics and corporate auditing. I worked inside companies that assumed no one would check their footnotes. I learned how signatures drift over time, how metadata exposes timelines, how power hides inside formatting. I connected my tablet to the boardroom projector. The Sentinel approval document filled the screen, executive authority transfer, authorized by founder and chairman. The signature appeared below. I zoomed in. That signature, I said evenly, isn't his. Marcus didn't laugh. My father's jaw tightened slightly. Be careful. I am. I projected a second document, a certified shareholder agreement signed 6 months before my grandfather's death. Compare the slant, I said. He wrote with a fountain pen, heavy pressure on the downstroke, slight left angle. This signature is ballpoint, even pressure, upright. One of the directors leaned forward. Marcus shook his head. You're speculating. I audit compliance structures for firms far larger than this, I replied. Speculation isn't billable. Silence deepened. I projected a third file, the digital metadata for the Sentinel document. Created 3 weeks after his medical incapacitation, I said. During a period when he was legally unable to execute amendments. The room did not move. It recalculated. Are you accusing someone of forgery? A board member asked carefully. I'm stating a discrepancy, I said. The system will determine intent. I reached back into the folder and removed a sealed amendment. Before he died, I continued, my grandfather updated the bylaws. Marcus's composure shifted, not outwardly but subtly, a tightening at the eyes. In the event of procedural irregularities regarding executive transfer, I read, control defaults to an independent compliance trustee. I placed the document on the table. I am that trustee. The word trustee did not echo. It settled. Marcus stood abruptly. This is absurd. No, I said. It's structured. One director adjusted his glasses. Is this filed? Yes. My father finally looked at me directly, not dismissing, not amused, assessing. You've been preparing this, he said. I've been observing. The board chair cleared his throat. Given the information presented, Project Sentinel is suspended pending forensic review. Suspended. The word carried weight. Marcus remained standing for a moment too long before sitting down slowly. No one addressed me directly after that. They addressed procedure, legal, timeline. The system had shifted from assumption to verification. I disconnected my tablet. As I closed my briefcase, I felt something settle into place inside me. Growing up, Marcus had always been the heir. His missteps reframed as boldness, his risks praised as vision. When I corrected small accounting inconsistencies at 16, my father called it nitpicking. When Marcus missed payroll projections at 25, it was strategic expansion. Patterns reveal themselves if you watch long enough. Only my grandfather watched the same way I did. A legacy isn't protected by obedience, he once told me. It's protected by clean records. I walked toward the door. You could have brought this to us privately, my father said quietly. I paused. It was never private, I answered. Then I left the room. The hallway felt longer on the way out, not heavier, clearer. For years, I had been the extra one. The mistake. The daughter expected to manage quietly somewhere else. Today I did manage, without raising my voice, without asking permission, without apologizing. Have you ever stood in a room where the outcome was already declared before you entered? What did you notice first? The words or the silence around them? If this story feels familiar in any way, you're welcome to stay with me for the next part. The elevator ride down was quiet. Not the mechanical kind of quiet, the measured kind. The kind that comes after something has shifted but not yet settled. I watched the numbers descend. 3, 2, 1. When the doors opened, Caroline was standing near the reception desk pretending to reorganize files. She looked up, searching my face for clues. "Is everything resolved?" she asked carefully. "No," I said. "It's beginning." Her fingers tightened slightly on the folder she was holding. She nodded once and looked back down. In this building, survival depended on reading currents correctly. Outside, the air felt sharper than when I had arrived. I stood on the steps of Westbridge Holdings for a moment, not to gather myself, but to observe. Marcus exited the building 15 minutes later. He didn't see me at first. His phone was pressed to his ear. "Yes, suspend it," he said quietly. "No, it's procedural. It won't hold." He ended the call and finally noticed me. We held each other's gaze across the stone walkway. He walked toward me with the controlled pace of someone who believed confrontation should look dignified. "You blindsided the board," he said. "I corrected the record." "You embarrassed the family." "I protected it." A muscle shifted in his jaw. "You think this makes you relevant?" I did not answer that. Relevance is not declared. It is exercised. He stepped closer. "You left," he said. "You built something elsewhere. That was your choice." "Yes, and now you return and undermine everything." "I returned because something was wrong." He studied me as if searching for emotion, for anger, for jealousy. I offered neither. "You always did this," he said finally. "You wait, you watch, and then you interfere." "I verify." The word irritated him more than accusation would have. "You're not built for this," he said quietly. "You never were." He meant public dominance, handshakes, applause. He did not mean structure. "Maybe," I said, "but I'm built for systems." He exhaled sharply and stepped back. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed. "It isn't." He walked to his car without looking back. I remained where I was for another minute, feeling nothing dramatic, no satisfaction, no triumph, just alignment. I returned to the small apartment I had rented near the river. It was temporary, sparse, clean, a desk by the window, a kettle, 2 chairs. I placed my grandfather's folder on the desk and sat down. When he handed it to me years ago, he did not dramatize it. He never dramatized anything. "Marcus understands people," he said. "Your father understands leverage. You understand structure." He paused before adding, "Structure outlasts both." After he died, the family narrative moved quickly. Project Sentinel was presented as necessary modernization, consolidation, vision, Marcus as CEO, my father as chairman emeritus. The language was careful, clean. I was invited to the announcement as a courtesy. I did not attend. Instead, I requested copies of the restructuring documents under compliance review. They delayed. That delay told me more than approval would have. In Chicago, I had learned that when documentation hesitates, there is usually friction beneath it. I opened my laptop and began reviewing the board bylaws again, not for discovery, for confirmation. The amendment naming me compliance trustee had been filed correctly, time-stamped, notarized, digitally archived. My grandfather had not trusted sentiment. He trusted process. There was a soft knock at my apartment door. I stood slowly. My father. He looked older outside the boardroom, less constructed. "I thought we should speak," he said. "Come in." He remained standing near the doorway, as if uncertain whether to settle. "You've always been methodical," he said, "even as a child." I remembered balancing my allowance in a small notebook while Marcus spent his immediately. "It wasn't rebellion," he continued. "It was detachment." "Observation," I corrected. He ignored that. "Marcus has relationships," he said. Investors trust him. Investors trust stability. And you think he destabilizes. I think the document was irregular. His eyes sharpened. You're implying intent. I'm implying discrepancy. He studied me the way he used to when deciding whether to punish or dismiss. You were never meant to carry this, he said quietly. That wasn't your decision. Something passed across his face then, not anger, recognition. You always believed we underestimated you, he said. I never needed you to estimate me. Silence moved between us. You could have come to me first, he said. And asked what? I replied. If the signature was real? He did not answer. Instead, he looked around the apartment. Sparse, functional. You've done well for yourself, he said. Yes. And you never asked for help. No. He nodded once. That independence, he said slowly, feels like accusation. It isn't. He turned toward the door. Marcus won't yield, he said. I'm not asking him to. When he left, I remained standing for several seconds. In families like mine, conflict is rarely loud. It is structural, built into expectations long before any document is signed. Growing up, Marcus was introduced as the future of Westbridge. I was introduced as capable. Capable means self-sufficient. It also means expendable. At 16, I pointed out a discrepancy in one of the quarterly summaries, a minor reporting inconsistency. My father thanked Marcus for catching it. Marcus accepted the praise without correction. I did not contest it. I learned something more valuable instead. Power is not loud. It is allocated. And if you understand allocation, you can trace it back to its source. 3 days after the board meeting, a forensic audit request was filed. Not by me, by the board chair. Systems, once activated, continue moving. Marcus began making calls. Investors, legal counsel, directors. I did not call anyone. I reviewed timelines. Metadata never lies comfortably. The Sentinel document creation date did not align with the hospital records of my grandfather's incapacitation. Someone had adjusted something. Perhaps not maliciously, perhaps arrogantly. Arrogance is often louder than fraud. I received a message that evening from one of the directors. We should talk. I replied with a time. Not immediately. Prepared. When I closed my laptop, the river outside the window reflected the streetlights in steady lines. Westbridge was not collapsing. It was recalibrating. And for the first time, I was not standing outside the recalibration. I was part of its structure. Have you ever realized that the real conflict was never about personality, but about control of process? When you look back at moments of dismissal, do you see the pattern now? If this resonates, stay with me. The next part is quieter and more decisive. The forensic audit began quietly. No announcement, no press release. Just a formal notice circulated to board members and legal counsel. The language was restrained. Routine verification, procedural integrity, standard review. Marcus called it temporary noise. I called it momentum. 3 days after my father visited my apartment, I met with Daniel Hargrove, the board chair, in his private office on the 4th floor. He had served under my grandfather for 27 years. He believed in order, not spectacle. He did not offer coffee. He closed the door carefully before sitting down. You understand what this triggers, he said. Yes, it will not remain contained. I'm aware. He studied me for a moment, as if recalculating something he thought he already understood. You were always distant, he said. I assumed it was disinterest. It was documentation. A faint shift in his expression. Not approval, recognition. The signature discrepancy is credible, he continued, but Marcus claims your grandfather verbally approved the restructuring before his hospitalization. Verbal approval doesn't amend bylaws. No. Silence rested between us, not tense, evaluative. There's more, I said. He did not interrupt. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. Metadata logs from the internal document server. I explained. The Sentinel file was uploaded from Marcus's credentials at 2:17 a.m., 3 weeks after incapacitation. Hargrove leaned closer. Version history shows 2 revisions before board circulation, I continued, both after the hospital's legal freeze on executive authority. Are you alleging fabrication? I'm presenting sequence. He nodded once, slowly. You've done this before, he said, in other companies. And what happens when sequence contradicts narrative? Governance intervenes. He closed my laptop gently. If this escalates, he said, it will fracture the family. It already has. That answer held longer than I expected. When I left his office, I did not return to my apartment immediately. Instead, I walked through the operations floor, the logistics department where shipments were tracked in real time. Few employees recognized me. That anonymity felt clean. Growing up, I was visible as surname, not as function. Here, I was neither. A junior analyst glanced up from her screen. Can I help you? I'm just observing, I said. She nodded and returned to her data. I stood behind her workstation briefly. Numbers moved across her monitor. Inventory allocations, delivery projections, error margins. Systems don't lie out of spite. They reflect input. Marcus's leadership style had always favored acceleration, expansion, visibility. My grandfather favored control, different philosophies. One built speed, the other built durability. By the end of the week, external auditors were granted access to the document archives. Marcus sent a company-wide memo framing it as proactive transparency. I read it twice. Language matters. He positioned himself as cooperative, strategic, undeterred. He never mentioned the signature. That omission was intentional. That evening, I received a call from Caroline. I probably shouldn't be doing this, she said quietly. Then don't. A pause. There's a calendar entry you should know about, she continued. Private meeting, 2 nights before the Sentinel document was uploaded. Marcus and outside counsel, not logged in board minutes. Time? 9:30 p.m. Location? Executive conference room. Thank you. She exhaled softly. Are we safe? Systems are, I said. People adapt. After the call, I reviewed building access logs. Marcus's keycard registered entry at 9:12 p.m. Outside counsel at 9:28 p.m. Exit times past midnight. Unscheduled, unrecorded. Document upload at 2:17 a.m. Sequence. Not accusation. Sequence. The following morning, Marcus requested a private meeting. I accepted. His office was larger than my grandfather's had ever been. Floor-to-ceiling glass, clean lines, controlled light. He stood by the window when I entered. You're digging, he said without turning. I'm reviewing. You're trying to corner me. I'm clarifying process. He faced me then. You think this is about ego? He said. It isn't. The company needed decisive leadership. Father was hesitating. The board was stagnating. So you accelerated. Yes. At 2 a.m., his eyes sharpened. You don't understand the pressure. I understand documentation. He moved closer. Grandfather wanted continuity, he said. He said that repeatedly. Continuity isn't unilateral transfer. He trusted me. He trusted structure. A flicker, brief, controlled. You always hide behind technicalities, he said. I rely on them. Silence expanded. If the audit confirms irregularity, he said carefully, what then? Then governance determines remedy. And you? I execute bylaws. He watched me for a long moment. You're not doing this for the company, he said quietly. You're doing it to prove something. I considered that. No, I said. I'm doing it because it's incorrect. He searched my face for resentment. He found none. That unsettled him more than anger would have. You think Father will side with you? He asked. I don't require sides. When I left his office, the weight in the building felt different. Not volatile. Suspended. Later that afternoon, my father called. Marcus says you're escalating. he said. "I'm following sequence. You could destroy his credibility. If credibility relies on irregular documentation, it isn't stable." A long silence. "You always speak like this," he said, "as if emotion is irrelevant." "It is. That's not how families work. It's how governance works." He exhaled slowly. "You know what people will say." "Yes, that you waited." "I did. For what?" "For evidence." The line remained open for several seconds after that. "Your grandfather did trust you," he said finally. "Yes. He never told me about the trustee clause. He didn't tell many people." Another silence. "You think I don't see what's happening?" he asked. "I think you see it now." That landed. 3 days later, preliminary audit findings were circulated confidentially to the board. No conclusions. Just timelines. Signature analysis inconclusive pending further review. Metadata sequence verified. Unrecorded meeting confirmed. Governance irregularity probable. Probable is enough to pause power. By the end of that week, Marcus's authority was temporarily restricted pending resolution. Not revoked. Contained. He did not react publicly. He adjusted privately. When I returned to my apartment that evening, the river was calm. No headlines. No dramatic confrontation. Just recalibration. I placed my grandfather's folder back into the drawer beside my desk. Not as a weapon, as record. For years, I had been the quiet one in rooms where decisions were announced without me. Now I was the one introducing sequence. And sequence changes outcomes. Have you ever realized that the real turning point wasn't confrontation, but documentation? When you step back from conflict, do you see where structure failed first? If you're still here, the next part is where the system finishes what it started. The formal review lasted 12 days, 12 quiet, procedural days, no raised voices, no dramatic resignations, just email threads marked confidential, meetings logged in careful language, outside counsel moving through hallways with controlled expressions. Westbridge did not implode. It recalculated. On the 13th morning, the board convened again. This time, I arrived 5 minutes early. No one laughed when I entered. Marcus was already seated, not at the head of the table, one seat to the right. The shift was subtle, intentional. My father sat beside him, hands folded, expression unreadable. Daniel Hargrove opened the meeting without preamble. "The independent review has concluded its preliminary assessment," he said. "We will summarize findings." A document appeared on the screen. No embellishment, no accusation, just sequence. Hospital incapacitation date. Executive authority freeze. Unrecorded meeting between Marcus and external counsel. Sentinel document creation timestamp. Signature inconsistency probability assessment. While forensic handwriting analysis remains inconclusive, Hargrove continued, the governance timeline indicates procedural breach. The room absorbed that slowly. Marcus did not interrupt. He had prepared for this. "The review does not conclude intent to defraud," Hargrove added. However, the restructuring process bypassed required safeguards under existing bylaws. Bylaws. Structure. Not morality, just structure. "As compliance trustee," Hargrove continued, turning slightly toward me, "Ms. Ethan Westbridge is empowered to recommend corrective action." Every eye moved. I did not stand immediately. When I did, it was without urgency. "I recommend," I said evenly, "that Project Sentinel be formally dissolved." A faint shift in posture around the table. "And," I continued, "that interim executive authority revert to the pre-Sentinel structure until a transparent succession process is conducted under third-party oversight." Marcus's gaze did not leave mine. "You're asking the board to stall progress," he said calmly. "I'm asking the board to follow its own rules. That invites instability. Procedural clarity reduces instability." Silence held. My father spoke for the first time. "Is there evidence of financial harm?" he asked. "No," Hargrove replied. Is there evidence of personal enrichment? No. My father turned toward me. Then what exactly are we correcting? Process, I said. He studied me carefully. You're dismantling a decision over timing. I'm preserving governance over convenience. The board chair cleared his throat. The trustee recommendation stands, he said. Board members will vote. No theatrics. Ballots were distributed. The sound of paper sliding across polished wood felt louder than any argument. Marcus did not look at his ballot immediately. He leaned back slightly, expression composed. When the votes were collected and tallied, Hargrove did not delay. Project Sentinel is dissolved. No applause, no gasps, just a structural reset. Marcus inclined his head once, a controlled acknowledgement. He did not argue further, because he understood something important. The system had spoken. After the meeting adjourned, the room emptied in slow currents. My father remained seated. So, he said quietly. So, I replied. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago, not defeated, adjusted. You could have pushed harder, he said. Requested resignation. I wasn't seeking removal. Only containment. Yes. He nodded once. You always calculate long term. Yes. And Marcus calculates momentum. Yes. He folded his hands again. I underestimated you, he said finally. I did not respond immediately. Underestimation is rarely corrected by acknowledgement. It is corrected by repetition. I didn't require estimation, I said. He almost smiled at that. Outside the building, reporters had not gathered. Investors had not panicked, because nothing visible had collapsed. The correction had been internal. That afternoon, a formal notice was circulated. Westbridge Holdings will initiate a transparent succession review process under independent governance advisory oversight. Professional language, controlled language. Marcus requested a final private conversation before leaving for the day. I accepted. He stood by the window again when I entered his office. You could have taken it, he said without turning. Taken what? Control, publicly. That wasn't necessary. You had leverage. I used enough. He faced me then. You've always believed patience wins, he said. It reveals. He studied me for a long moment. You think I forged it, he said quietly. I think you rushed. He didn't deny it. I believed Father would hesitate, he continued. He always does when legacy becomes emotional. And you don't. No. That difference matters. He exhaled slowly. Are you staying? He asked. For now. To oversee? To stabilize. He nodded once. You never wanted the spotlight, he said. No. You wanted authority. I wanted accuracy. He almost laughed at that, but stopped himself. Accuracy is authority, he said. Yes. That was the closest we had come to agreement in years. When I left the building that evening, the air felt different again. Not sharp, settled. The following week, governance advisors began interviews. Succession was no longer assumed. It was structured. Marcus remained a candidate. So did 2 external executives. I did not nominate myself. I did not need the title to exercise influence. Compliance oversight carries its own weight. My father called 3 nights later. I spoke with Marcus, he said. Yes. He admitted he pushed too quickly. Yes. You knew he would. I anticipated it. A pause. Your grandfather once told me something, my father said. He said you listen to silence. I do. I didn't understand what he meant. You don't need to. He was quiet for several seconds. You defended the company, he said finally. I defended structure. That may be the same thing. Yes. After we ended the call, I stood by the river again. Westbridge remained intact. Not because I overpowered anyone, because I allowed the system to expose itself. Growing up, Marcus had been called the heir. I had been called capable. Capable meant self-contained, peripheral. But systems are rarely defended by heirs. They are defended by the ones who read footnotes. I did not celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate, only restoration. The board would eventually appoint a CEO. Perhaps Marcus, perhaps not, but whoever held the title would do so under corrected bylaws, under documented clarity, under oversight. And that was enough. For the first time, no one in that building would casually call me the mistake. Not because I argued, because I proved sequence. Have you ever realized that power doesn't always fall? Sometimes it is simply restructured. When you think about the moments you were dismissed, did you respond loudly or did you wait? If this story feels familiar in your own way, you're welcome to stay. The next one will begin quietly, just like this one did.